Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. In today's discussion on controversial issues related to women, we'll discuss polygyny. Why is this allowed in Islam? Doesn't this practice put women in a disadvantaged position within a marriage? Let's sit down with Dr. Shabir Ally and learn more. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
Pleasure to be on.
So, what is polygyny?
Well, this is when a man gets married to multiple wives, as distinct from polygamy, which it works both ways. And polyandry is when a woman has several husbands. So now in classical Islamic law, it was well recognized that a man could marry up to four women at once, four wives at the same time.
And what is the traditional ruling or circumstance behind this?
Well, it seems that in past civilizations, it was often advantageous for society for men to have multiple wives, because this led to a rapid increase in the population, and tribes wanted to become larger very quickly, because the larger the tribe, the more powerful they were perceived to be, and did actually become. And whereas a woman may just have one pregnancy at a time, a man could be the father in many pregnancies all at once if he had multiple wives. And so the population could rapidly increase this way.
So the verse in the Quran that basically allows this.
Yes, of course the Quran was not introducing anything new, but what specifically the Quran seems to be speaking about is that soon after the Battle of Uhud, when many Muslims had lost their lives defending the nascent Islamic community, there were many widows and also many orphans of these fallen soldiers left behind. So the society had not developed itself yet to become a welfare state. So who was going to take care of the widows and orphans? The Quran naturally called on men to marry the widows of their fallen comrades in order not only to take care of the widows, but especially to take care of the orphaned children. And so hence the Quran speaks in the 4th chapter in the 3rd verse and it starts out by saying, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى, if you fear that you will not do justice to the orphans. So it seems to be that if the community could not do justice to the orphans in terms of taking care of the orphans through mere charity, then the solution for this problem of having widows and orphans in the society is for men to marry. Then it says, if you fear you will not do justice to the orphans, then marry women who are suitable to you in 2s and 3s and 4s. But if you fear that you will not do justice, then only one. So that there seems to be a particular situation there, and the intention was to do justice by taking care of the orphans.
So, you know, I know people here in Canada who do have more than one wife. So how do you explain this? So we're looking at this from a controversial perspective for women. What right does a woman have in this kind of a situation?
So what has happened in classical Islamic law is that the Quranic stipulation, if you fear that you will not do justice to the orphans, was ignored, and the idea that a man could have multiple wives was just simply taken as a blanket ruling and a possibility. This, of course, is linked also to the idea that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself had multiple wives. So ignoring the social context at the time, ignoring the fact that in past societies it was very common for men to have multiple wives, Muslim scholars have interpreted the practice of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the Quran itself to mean that indefinitely, regardless of circumstances, a man could have up to 4 wives. Take that as a blanket sort of ruling. And that would explain why some, even in Canada, despite the fact that Canadian law prohibits this, would go around the back of the law and behind the law, and they would actually have multiple wives. Now, this leads to some disadvantages for women, and this is where your question is pointing. And this is what we need to look at in going back to the question of ijtihad that we started out describing at the beginning of this series, and why it is essential that we rethink how this particular practice among Muslims has endured to this day.
What about specific? Does a woman have any rights if, a husband comes to her and says, well, you know what, I feel like getting another wife? Does she have any rights in classical ruling, or are you saying that also needs to be reviewed?
In classical rulings, no, the woman did not have a say in this. The man could just simply announce to his existing wife that, I've taken another wife, or he doesn't even have to tell her. He could legally, according to Islamic law, have another wife, up to 4 wives all at once, and none of them need to know that her husband has other wives. Of course, usually this did not happen, but it could theoretically happen. Now, in modern times, some scholars look at a stipulation which is it has roots in our classical tradition, that a woman could actually stipulate a condition in her marriage. Just so we have prenuptial contractual agreements, a woman could stipulate that when she's marrying a guy, that if he were to marry another wife, then the woman who's making this agreement with him would have the right to issue a divorce or to call a divorce. So that's a stipulation that one could put. Whether one would actually live by that stipulation later on, because circumstances could change, and one's being in that situation at the time may affect how one views the question, as opposed to when one is writing the contract.
So you're saying this is how classically it's been, but because of ijtihad and our positive outlook on women's issues, you're saying this is something that needs to be revisited so that women do have a say and they do, I guess, have some rights in this situation.
Yes, of course, if we are to speak more frankly, we should highlight some of the problems that result from this sort of multiple engagement. We spoke about divorce previously and the ease with which a Muslim man in the classical tradition can issue a divorce. Now, if he has multiple wives, then it's easier still for him to divorce one, because he divorces one and he's still got up to another 3. If he's angry with one, he does not have to go overboard to try and please her, because the classical law says that he should try to please all of his wives. But what happens in actual practice is that if he's got 4 wives, then obviously, if one is not angry with him, he will find delight in the other 3.
Yeah.
So there are actually problems with this form of marriage, and that's why it has not become a common practice among Muslims. Someone estimated a long time ago, a certain Eugene Hill, that only 2.2% of Muslim marriages worldwide fall under this category. Most Muslim men just simply marry one wife, of course, because there is a lot of responsibility with multiple marriages. If you have multiple wives and you have multiple responsibilities, you have children from all of these marriages, then you have much more than you could actually handle. So most men will just simply settle for one wife at a time, but the problem does still remain in case a man would opt to marry up to 4 wives, and usually it's 2, not 3 and 4, if one does resort to this. But even with 2 wives, it means that a man's time is divided, his wealth is divided, his attention is divided, his love is divided, and so on.
So would you still argue that Islam has a positive outlook of women in light of this traditional ruling?
Yes, and we should reclaim that positive outlook. We should look at what Islam was doing at the time. So here is a situation in 7th century Arabia. Women had few rights, if any. Girls were being killed off because some parents thought it was a burden to have female children. They wanted boys instead. So in that situation, Islam was actually uplifting the status of women. Whereas women had very few rights, Islam started to introduce the rights for women. But we shouldn't see the Quranic revelation and the prophetic example as being like the final stage in that development. It is a very important stage in that development. It is actually an impetus towards greater development in the future. So we should continue that development. And what has happened happened is that the rest of the world continued to develop and advance the rights of women, and Muslims have tended with the classical tradition to hold on to the way in which things were back in the 7th century of Arabia, the way it was established in the prophetic example and in the Quranic revelation, and sometimes even ignoring some aspects of the Quranic revelation, as we've seen in the case of the stipulation, if you fear that you will not do justice to the orphans. But we have tended to hold on to things as they were interpreted at a certain time, up to a couple of hundred years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And if someone says, well, wait a minute, women could have this right, like, for example, women could drive cars, there are still some people who would resist the idea that a woman could drive cars. And we could see that this is still the situation in Saudi Arabia, which is a conservative Muslim society. So we have tended to hold on to things, and only under the most severe pressure do we relinquish some aspects of the classical tradition. But we need to have a paradigm shift in which we look more holistically, and we see that the Quranic revelation and the prophetic example did not mean to be the end stage in development. Yes, it was perfect, but as a perfect baby will develop and grow and increase in wisdom and knowledge and experience, so too the Muslim community, though having a perfect religion at the time, will continue to grow and develop and learn and improve on that perfection. Still be perfection, but in a different way and in a more fitting way, given the present circumstances in which we live.
As always, an enlightening conversation. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.